The Hymns on Paradise, Hymn 1. At the outset, St. Ephrem emphasizes that biblical narrative concerning paradise in Genesis 2-3 contains much more profound teaching than any literal reading of the text would suggest. Our reading of it should accordingly be accompanied by a sense of both awe and of love. Only then will the inner vision be enabled to perceive something of the profundity of its meaning. The second half of the poem concerns the topographical relationship of paradise to the fallen world, first in the context of Adam and his immediate descendants, and then from an eschatological point of view based on the parable of Lazarus and the rich man. 1. Moses, who instructs all men with his celestial writings, he, the master of the Hebrews, has instructed us in his teaching, the law, which constitutes a very treasure house of revelations, wherein is revealed the tale of the garden, described by things visible but glorious for what lies hidden. Spoken of in few words, yet wondrous with its many plants. Refrain, response. Praise to your righteousness, which exalts those who prove victorious. I took my stand halfway between awe and love. A yearning for paradise invited me to explore it, but awe at its majesty restrained me from my search. With wisdom, however, I reconciled the two. I revered what lay hidden, and meditated on what was revealed. The aim of my search was to gain profit. The aim of my silence was to find succor. Joyfully did I embark on the tale of paradise, a tale that is short to read, but rich to explore. My tongue read the story's outward narrative, while my intellect took wing and soared upward in awe, as it perceived the splendor of paradise, not indeed as it really is, but insofar as humanity is granted to comprehend it. 4. With the eye of the mind I gaze upon paradise. The summit of every mountain is lower than its summit. The crest of the flood reached only its foothills. These it kissed with reverence before turning back to rise above and subdue the peak of every hill and mountain. The foothills of paradise it kisses, while every summit it buffets. Not that the ascent to paradise is arduous because of its height, for those who inherit it experience no toil there. With its beauty it joyfully urges on those who ascend. Amidst glorious rays it lies resplendent, all fragrant with its scents. Magnificent clouds fashion the abodes of those who are worthy of it. From their abodes the children of light descend. They rejoice in the midst of the world where they had been persecuted. They dance on the sea's surface and do not sink, for Simon, though a rock, did not sink. Blessed is he who has seen, together with them, his beloved ones. Below in their bands of disciples, and on high in their bridal chambers. There was that. Not that the ascent to paradise is arduous because of its height, for those who inherit it experience no toil there. With its beauty it joyfully urges on those who ascend. It's the way of the passions that is hard. The clouds, their chariots, fly through the air. Each of them has become the leader of those he has taught. His chariot corresponds to his labors. His glory corresponds to his followers. Glory corresponds to his followers. Blessed the person who has seen as they fly, the prophets with their bands, the apostles with their multitudes, for whoever has both acted and taught is great in the kingdom. But because the sight of paradise is far removed and the eye's range cannot attain to it, I have described it over simply, making bold a little. Resembling that halo which surrounds the moon, we should look upon paradise as being circular too, having both sea and dry land encompassed within it. And because my tongue overflows as one who has sucked the sweetness of paradise, I will portray it in diverse forms. Moses made a crown for that resplendent altar. With a wreath entirely of gold did he crown the altar in its beauty. Thus gloriously entwined is the wreath of paradise that encircles the whole creation. When Adam sinned, God cast him forth from paradise, but in his grace he granted him the low ground beyond it, settling him in the valley. In his grace. Below the foothills of paradise. But when mankind even there continued to sin, they were blotted out, and because they were unworthy to be neighbors of paradise, God commanded the ark to cast them out on Mount Cardu. There the families of 2 brothers had separated. Cain went off by himself and lived in the land of Nod, a place lower still than that of Sheth and Enosh. But those who lived on higher ground were called the children of God. Left their own region, and came down to take wives from the daughters of Cain down below. The children of light dwell on the heights of paradise, and beyond the abyss they espy the rich man. He too, as he raises his eyes, beholds Lazarus, and calls out to Abraham to have pity on him. But Abraham, that man so full of pity, who even had pity on Sodom, has no pity yonder, for him who showed no pity. The abyss severs any love which might act as a mediary, thus preventing the love of the just from being bound to the wicked, so that the good should not be tortured by the sight in Gehenna of their children or brothers or family or mother who had denied Christ, imploring mercy from her son or her maid or her daughter, who all had suffered affliction for the sake of Christ's teaching. There the persecuted laugh at their persecutors, the afflicted at those who had caused them affliction, the slain at those who had put them to death, the prophets at those who had stoned them, the apostles at those who had crucified them. The children of light reside in their lofty abode, and as they gaze upon the wicked and count their evil actions, they are amazed to what extent these people have cut off all hope by committing such iniquity. Woe to him who tries to hide his shameful deeds in the dark, who does wrong and then tries to deceive those who have seen. Having gone in and committed some wrong, he lies so as to deceive those who have heard. May the wings of your grace protect me, for there the accusing finger points out and daily proclaims the sinner's shame and hidden dealings. What I have told must suffice for my boldness. But if there is anyone who dares to go on and say, as for the dull-witted and simple people who have done wrong out of ignorance, once they have been punished and paid their debt, he who is good allows them to dwell in some remote corner of paradise, where they can gaze on that blessed food of the crumbs. This place, despised and spurned by the denizens of paradise, those who burn in Gehenna hungrily desire their torment doubles at the sight of its fountains. They quiver violently as they stand on the opposite side. The rich man, too, begs for succor, but there is no one to wet his tongue, for fire is within them, while the water is opposite them. Hymn 2. At judgment, the gate to paradise will sift the good from the bad. Its discerning powers allow in all those who, while still on earth, have forged a key to paradise by the conduct of their lives, whereas those who have neglected to do so find themselves excluded. Their moral ugliness is incompatible with the spiritual beauties of paradise. Those who prove worthy of paradise will be given an abode appropriate to the character of their life on earth. Like the ark and like Mount Sinai at the law-giving, paradise is divided into 3 different levels. Blessed is he for whom paradise yearns. Yes, paradise yearns for the man whose goodness makes him beautiful. It engulfs him at its gateway. It embraces him in his bosom. It caresses him in its very womb, for it splits open and receives him into its inmost parts. But if there is someone it abhors, it removes him and casts him out. This is the gate of testing that belongs to him who loves mankind. Response. Blessed is he who was pierced and so removed the sword from the entry to paradise. Forge here on earth and take the key to paradise. The door that welcomes you smiles radiantly upon you. The door, all discerning, conforms its measure to those who enter it. In its wisdom it shrinks and it grows. According to the stature and rank attained by each person, it shows by its dimensions whether they are perfect or lacking in something. Blessed is he who is pierced, and so removed the sword from the entry to paradise. When people see that they have lost everything, that riches do not endure and carnal desires no longer exist, that beauty and power disappear and vanish. Then they recollect themselves and are filled with remorse, because choked with care they heard with contempt those words, "Your possessions are but a passing dream, your inheritance darkness." Blessed is he who was pierced, and so removed the sword from the entry to paradise. What they once possessed they have lost, and found that they never had. They desired happiness, but it flew away, and the woe they had dreaded has arrived. What they had hoped on has proved an illusion, and what they never sought for they have now found. They groan because they are brought low and have been robbed, for their way of life deceived them. While their torment is very real, their luxurious living has vanished, and their punishment does not come to an end. Blessed is he who was pierced, and so removed the sword from the entry to paradise. The righteous, too, perceive that their own affliction no longer exists. Their suffering does not endure. Their burden no longer remains, and it seems as if no anguish had ever assailed them. Their fasts appear as though a mere dream, for they have woken, as it were from sleep, to discover paradise and the kingdom's table spread out before them. By those who are outside, the summit cannot be scaled, but from the inside paradise inclines its whole self to all who ascend it. The whole of its interior gazes upon the just with joy. Paradise girds the loins of the world, encircling the great sea, neighbor to the beings on high, friendly to those within it, hostile to those without. At its boundary I saw figs growing in a sheltered place, from which crowns were made that adorned the brows of the guilty pair, while their leaves blushed, as it were. For him who was stripped naked, their leaves were required for those who had lost their garments. Although they covered Adam, still they made him blush with shame and repent, because in a place of such splendor a man who is naked is filled with shame. Blessed is he who is pierced, and so removed the sword from the entry to paradise. Who is capable of gazing upon the garden's splendor, seeing how glorious it is, and in all its design, how harmonious in its proportions, how spacious for those who dwell there, how radiant with its abodes? Its fountains delight with their fragrance, but when they issue forth toward us, they become impoverished in our country, since they put on the savors of our land as we drink them. Blessed is he who was pierced, and so removed the sword from the entry to paradise. Indeed, that will for whom everything is easy constrains these abundant fountains of paradise, confining them with land, like water channels. He summoned them to issue forth in our direction, just as he bound up the waters in the bosom of his clouds, ready to be sent forth into the atmosphere at the bidding of his will. When he made his intricate design, he varied its beauties, so that some levels were far more glorious than others. To the degree that one level is higher than another, so too its glory, the more sublime. In this way he allots the foothills to the most lowly, and the slopes to those in between, and the heights to the exalted. When the just ascend its various levels to receive their inheritance, with justice he raises up each one to the degree that accords with his labors, which each is stopped at the level whereof he is worthy. There being sufficient levels in paradise for everyone, the lowest parts for the repentant, the middle for the righteous, and the heights for those victorious, while the summit is reserved for God's presence. Noah made the animals live in the lowest part of the ark. In the middle part he lodged the birds, while Noah himself, like the deity, resided in the upper deck. On Mount Sinai it was the people who dwelt below, the priests round about it, and Aaron halfway up, while Moses was on its heights, and the glorious one on the summit. A symbol of the divisions in the garden of life did Moses trace out in the ark, and on Mount Sinai too he depicted for us the types of paradise with all its arrangements, harmonious, fair, and desirable in all things, in its height, its beauty, its fragrance, and its different species. Here is the harbor of all riches, whereby the church is depicted. Blessed is he who was pierced and so removed the sword from the entry to paradise.